This is Capturing Light, episode number 138 with David Wells.
Welcome to Capturing Light, a director of photographers podcast, spotlighting cinematography tips, tools, and techniques, inspiring and educating filmmakers like you so you can illuminate your vision. And now, your host, Les Gaddis.
Welcome to the Capturing Light podcast. I'm your host, Les Gaddis, and today I am talking to David Wells. He's a cinematographer that's based in Texas. A lot of the stuff that he was saying is things that I've been saying / internalizing for a really long time. I feel like David is like my spirit animal. Such a cool dude. I really enjoyed this conversation. He dropped a ton of just gems, nuggets. You pick whatever you want the analogy to be, and he was dropping it. So you will definitely enjoy this conversation. So check it out. Here it is. Conversation with David Wells. All right. So I want to thank David Wells for coming on the Capture and Light podcast. How are you doing?
Doing good. Good. How about yourself?
Doing good. I've been excited to chat with you because, I've been stalking your Instagram feed and, reading blogs posted about you. And I was like, man, this guy, he's pretty legit.
I appreciate it. I don't know how much of that is true or not, but yeah. Well,
So let's start with talking about how you got started in the industry.
yeah. I mean, that's one of those things. I was actually just watching something a little while ago about people talking about how they get started in the industry, and it's kind of interesting. Like everybody has such unique paths. Mine was, I think it was inevitable that it was going to happen. I think I fought it for a long time. I was like a movie kid growing up, right? Just constantly, I could put a movie on anytime, anywhere. Had to watch the whole thing. Didn't want anyone to talk to me. And not all being in the same vein of, I was a big outdoors kid. I spent most of my time outdoors, but we literally could be in the middle of like riding dirt bikes and someone's like, oh, well, let's go to the movie. I'm in, right? I always thought I'd be in front of the camera. That was kind of what I always was like thinking of I wanted to do when I was a little kid. And then, you graduate high school, your parents are like, what are you going to do with the rest of your life? You're like, oh, I want to be in film. And, your parents are like, how do you expect to make any money?
Right.
Which is weird because I make more money now than I ever did with my college degree. It's crazy, right? I think that's the biggest thing that if I ever like mentor kids or kids come on set, I was like, you'll fall where you're supposed to. And if you have a strong calling to be in film, don't let anyone tell you can't do it.
Right.
Right. Because at some point, your job as Americans, our jobs are a huge chunk of our lives. We spend so much time working that if you don't love what you do, you're never going to be successful.
Right.
So if you have a strong calling to be in film, just go for it. You'll learn everything on your way. Because I got my degree in architecture. My dad was like, yeah, why would you go to film school? So it's like, cool. I'll stay in the creative realm. I decided on architecture. I stomached 7 years of a program.
Mm-hmm.
And then went into the workforce and was just like wearing a suit and tie. And I just felt like every day I was dying. But I continued to kind of do my own stuff on the side. And that's kind of how I found out I like to actually film. It's cliche to say that, GoPro kind of started it off. But in my era, that was the first camera that you could really just kind of take with you everywhere, which is how you're going to find out you enjoy filming, right? You can't take like a proper large camera and just, I mean, kids do now because the evolution of our industry has progressed so much that you can do stuff, back in 2008 or 9, that just wasn't happening. So a GoPro made it to where you could go shoot all these things you were doing and make little films. And that was where it really started. I think 3 years into being an architect, I was like, this is not what I want to do. And I was making enough on the side, kind of doing weddings and random things that I was like, I quit.
Mm-hmm.
I come back to this, right? I'm just gonna give this a shot. I think I'll regret it for the rest of my life if I don't. I barely even knew how to use a camera. I went to work at a startup and I wound up kind of managing a team of shooters over there. And so managing the projects, I kind of started jumping in and shooting a little bit. I had a buddy there named Greg Folks who taught me everything about cameras, and it just kind of that was I think in 2011 or 12, and that was kind of it. I worked there for 3 years, and then I was like, I don't want to direct any of this stuff. I'm not a great director. I'm a cinematographer. That is it. And so yeah, moved on to a sports documentary company. Was an in-house DP there for 3 years, and that was really the evolution of it. Right? They
Mm-hmm.
we were basically doing what ESPN was on like a micro fraction of the budget. We were making
Right.
these 30 for 30 sports docs over any and every sport that ESPN didn't cover, like
Mm-hmm.
competitive cheerleading, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, collegiate running, flat track racing. And they were just like, cool, there's two of you that are DPs in here. We're making this doc. Here's a ticket to Dubai for the world championships of jiu-jitsu. Like, here's a producer to go with you later. Right. And you're like,
Mm-hmm.
and as we grew, they kind of leaned on us like, what kind of lighting would you guys like to fly with? What kind of cameras do you want to shoot on? What lenses? And that was really where I kind of fell into, like, I think my creative style. And since I wasn't classically trained, I leaned on my perspectives and framing that I learned in architecture. I was
Mm-hmm.
somewhat in that vein of Wes Anderson, but also this more run and gun type of deal where it's like all of a sudden your style kind of just naturally emerges. I
Right.
think most everyone, right? You just fall into what you enjoy doing and then you supplement learning from industry standards and then boom, there you are. Um, so yeah, in 2020, we were kind of not shooting a lot. And I was like, I think this is the time to make the jump to freelancing and doing other things because I was doing them on the side.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was it. I wound up going full time freelance in smack middle of COVID and it just worked out. And that
I was
was,
like, man, perfect timing, smack middle of COVID.
yeah. I mean, it was kind of one of those things where it's forced, right? Because you work at a job
Right.
and I was salaried and it was like cushy. And I was like, this is great. I don't have to worry about anything. And then um, things kind of just turned and it was like, cool, I'm going to do it. And bought my first big camera and just, yeah, it progressed fast. I don't know. It's normally, I think I had the skill set already. I just was a little nervous to jump into the larger world.
Mm-hmm.
And it just kind of happened. And it was a whole lot all at once. There was never a gap where I was not busy. It was just like trial by fire on like figuring out really large commercial sets.
Right.
And
So I have two, I guess, questions. First question would be more on the education side of things, because I know you said like when you were doing your sports doc stuff, that's when you really kind of started to kind of, I guess, evolve creatively. Is that the moment when you started like looking at some of the stuff that you were creating and being like, okay, like I'm feeling really good about this, or it's looking the way that, like I'm being able to achieve what I went after? Or was there a moment where, like, between, you know, you just starting out from the GoPro to now, can you pinpoint that moment where you're just like, okay, I feel like not, I mean, we never really arrive, but
yeah,
like, okay, I feel like I'm producing pretty great content.
man, I have a lot of metaphors I like to do for stuff like this. If you're an athlete, right? Like let's say there is like the Emmitt Smith, right? Like
Hmm.
legendary running back. And then there's all these other running backs that are great in their own right, but they're not Emmitt Smith, right? And I
Hmm.
think what it is to be at some top tier of level of an athlete like that, you just have confidence in yourself,
Right.
right? You could look in the mirror and not in a cocky way be like, I just know what I'm doing. I think that was something that helped me. I was probably wrong a lot, but I do have a lot of inner confidence that I'm just gonna figure it out, right?
Right.
Which is probably helps me in some sense. It probably, inhibits me a little bit on a few things too, but I've always just kind of had confidence that I'm gonna figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get there. And if it's a long road, it's a struggle road, we'll just take it one step at a time, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
in any situation, if you get in a hole, like you can't sit there. It's just one step, one step, one step. So I think that was kind of what helped me, is I had way too much confidence in what I was doing. You know,
Right.
like, and I think I ran into that a couple of times where I would screw a few things up and
Mm-hmm.
I would still stand up for my decision on that, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I think that's been something that's helped me, because like I used to race dirt bikes and I could tell the days I would have that were really good at racing and days I'd have that are really bad at racing. And they came down to like mental states. If you're not feeling it, it reflects, right? And on the days you're just feeling really good, everything flows and happens. So I'm a big believer in like, have confidence in what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
uh, you're going to screw things up, right? You're going to fail. It's going to happen. Take those as learning lessons, but don't beat yourself up too much and just continue on down the path, right? We're all going to screw stuff up. It's just going to happen. I think it's how you handle it and move forward is ultimately where you're going to be able to land. So,
Right. Okay, cool. And then the other question that came from your earlier comments was you said I don't know if it was recently, but that you made a big purchase. And like I get this question all the time as far as like, should I, own a camera or, should I just always rent? Like, what is your experience with, I know that you own the Venice too. Like, what's the pros and cons of owning the gear versus not? And what are your thoughts on that?
honestly, this is funny because I was just listening to a podcast yesterday and it was Greg Frazier and he was talking. They were asking him about, he DP'd, I think it was like the iPhone 13 or 14 spot where they were using it to shoot like a larger
Yeah,
selfie.
yeah, yeah. I remember that.
And it was funny because what he talks about is he was like, it's a great camera. And he talked all of these really nice things about something that we keep in our pocket. He was talking about the forced fall off, right? Like what you're using on Zoom right now, right? It's
Right.
just, it's making it look like it has shallow depth of field. And he's really complimenting this thing that I think most large filmmakers would call trash. And
Mm-hmm.
it's a funny way of looking at a camera as a tool and figuring out how it could serve you best. I mean, he shot the new thing with, John David Washington on an FX3. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
right. And that's a prosumer camera. I think like $4,000 and you can own one of those.
Right.
Watch the trailer for that, and it's very, very hard to tell. Um, I bought my first camera I bought was an FX9, and the only reason I bought that was because I came from an FS7 in the sports stock world. It was
Right.
familiar. It was a step up. I felt like that sensor really allowed me to do a lot. And then it had built in variable NDs where, I mean, you could do micro adjustments. And coming from an outdoor sports world, I wasn't sure that I was going to jump right into commercial work, right? So I needed
Right.
a camera that gave me a lot of flexibility. And at the price tag of 10,000, I was like, cool, I'm just going to bill that to myself. So if I land a job, I'll charge 550 or 500 for the camera per job, and I'll use that to pay my B&H card back or whatever.
Right.
Um, actually, no, I took a loan out on that one, and then I used a B&H card to buy a lot of other stuff. But then all of a sudden you progress and you're looking at large sets, and I've had the opportunity to be on large sets since, and everything gets rented out, right? So it was like we were spending anywhere between $1,800 and $2,000 on larger things that they didn't want to use my FX9 on,
Mm-hmm.
and a mini LF or whatever it was. And I have a good relationship with Sony, and they did this article over me and they were asking about the FX9 and the Venice and stuff. And I was like, honestly, the Venice is beautiful, but you can make a pretty image out of almost any camera. I've seen
Mm-hmm.
guys use Blackmagic like 6Ks.
Right.
That's incredible, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really how you shape light. A lot of it is how you use filtration, the correct lensing. I mean, you pop a Canon 24 to 105 on that Venice, and it's not going to look
Right.
spectacular. Right? Versus if I took an FX3 and shot with some vintage Leicas or something like that, I would choose that setup all day,
Right.
every day. So the choice to purchase the Venice ultimately boiled down to I was giving a lot of money to rental houses,
Mm-hmm.
and we were consistently shooting on large cameras. So I was like, why don't I just own it myself and just line item it on projects? And then once it's paid off, I'm making all that money myself.
Right.
And then maybe I'll buy another camera, or maybe
Right.
at least owning like a little boutique rental thing, which is kind of what we're doing now. We own a couple sets of lenses, and I have some old rehouse Canon FDs and some Tokinas, and so yeah, we just line item to ourselves, and it just made sense at that point just to start growing in that direction. I was working enough, and enough projects were um, asking for it, but also I have the discretion, right? I have plenty of shoots that I don't charge full rate on, right?
Right.
They have a great idea. I want to help them out. I want it to look a certain way. I have access to that camera now that I can shave money off of it. If I'm like, cool, they only have half the rate. So I can either make money on the FX9, or I can lose a tad on the Venice, but it's on 5 other jobs this month. So it's boils down more to a little bit of a business aspect on it, but yeah, it just made sense at that point to kind of jump into the larger camera.
Right, right. No, that makes a ton of sense, and I'm glad that you explained it that way too for, people that are listening that, are on the fence about either buying a camera or like owning cameras, and like because you have your people that I feel are like in the middle, which I think is a great place to live, where it's just you're camera agnostic and it's like the right tool for the right job, and if it benefits XYZ then it makes sense. And then you have the people that are like, I choose not to own a camera because I don't want to fall in the trap of being. So yeah, no, that's
And also different cameras for different workflows, honestly.
right.
One thing I didn't anticipate when I bought the Venice 2, I do work with a lot of ACs, but every once in a while I'm on something that I can't have one. The
Right.
Venus 2 is really hard to use unless you're on a very proper set. It doesn't
Hmm.
have a lot of operator side tools.
Hmm.
It does have an AC side to the camera, and different from the Mini LF, it doesn't have to have a viewfinder to work.
Right.
So you can change everything on the AC side, but very limited. So if I'm out on an easy rig and I don't have an AC, I would have to physically turn the camera to the AC side and make adjustments and then turn it back, which is not conducive. Versus if all you're after is a raw codec, just own a Raptor. It's like
Right.
a quarter of the price, right?
Hmm.
Um, or honestly, even a mini LF, right? You can do a lot of things right there from the viewfinder. You can change everything, so it's even honestly easier. Um, and honestly, Sony's got all these codecs that you can't even put into, like, say you edit on Premiere. If you shot 8.6K raw in their XOCN codec, you can't even drop that into Premiere. It has to
Right.
be because
Right.
it's codec. So there's just different cameras. I think if you're gonna buy a camera and you're investing that type of cash, definitely do your homework. Like, I
Hmm.
love the Venice too, but we do enough work that warrants using it correctly. Versus
Hmm.
if I was in a different like category, I would look at like a Komodo, right? Because still shoots raw, still's really pretty. Yeah, just there's so many cameras. Like I said, you can do a lot with a Black Magic. I
Right.
tell the difference.
For sure. So looking at your Instagram, some of your more recent stuff was shot, on it was virtual production. Um, can you just talk a little bit about the whole process of like how you as a cinematographer, deal in the virtual production space, and what are some of the, I guess, cliff note, pros and cons of working in the virtual production, workflow?
Yeah, virtual production is awesome. It has its limitation. Like I said, this is my personal opinion. I'm still very much an in-camera guy, uh,
Hmm.
but I love the virtual production for certain aspects of things. Um, we were able to shoot a Cadillac commercial out there, and the sheer amount of looks we were able to get without the car even being started was incredible. It does have its limitations. You do have to learn to work with it because the volume does have intensities, right? So it can be
Hmm.
super bright, it can be dim. You have to learn how to light it really. Um, Honestly, you have to keep light off of the LED panels because let's say you have some dead pixels because it's a black, right?
Mm-hmm.
If light is hitting that panel, it's not going to be a true black. It's going to start to cast some light on that black, and it's not going to look the way you want. So the volume work is fun, but it definitely takes a lot of prep. You need to go out and kind of run through what you're doing. I've been fortunate enough to work on it, a handful of times now, so it's gotten pretty easy, and the workflow is really great. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
we're doing one tomorrow. I think Wednesday we go into pre-production for another shootout on it, which is awesome. And I got really lucky. There's a great volume in town called Stray Vista, and the guys over there are incredible. Their Unreal tech is just there's just nothing you can't do. So they've got
Mm-hmm.
a they make it really easy for you, honestly. Um, and you're in the air conditioning, and you
Right.
don't have to move around. Right? You're there for the whole day. I think the Cadillac job I set on a Fisher for 10 hours. I felt lazy.
Right. That's awesome. Um, so like what's in the, I guess, the future for you? Like what do you want to be working on? Like what's your kind of like your dream genre, you know, production, whether it's, narrative or commercial, or like what do you want to put yourself out there to do?
It's funny you bring that up because this is kind of that year I'm investing into that. Um, I'm shooting. Well, I've done a couple shorts. They're like ultra short, so they're like 5 minutes or something like that.
Hmm.
Uh, I really want to be tied to an image for a lot longer. I think that's the thing where I'm kind of like I love the commercial world, and I don't know if I'll quit that entirely. I really am. It's good money type of
Right.
deal. I do most of that work. Um, so I don't want to say I'm fully moving away from that because I'm not. But I really want to start putting myself out there more as a narrative DP. I want to be tied to a story. I want to look at, you know, 100 images, how they can tie together versus five or six or 10 or 12 to tell
Right.
us. Um, I want to do less camera movements and really focus on the atmosphere I can put two actors in and how I can try to create a space for them to evoke emotion in. That's a big thing I'm pushing for this year. So I'm shooting my first short film next month. I think the runtime will be close to like 20 minutes. Um, and so we've been working on that for a couple months now. Um, almost raised enough money for it. I think we've got like 17 days left and we're at like 78%. So should be a fun one. I've got a lot of really talented people involved in that one. The director's great, the story's great. Um, so I'm gonna kind of cut my teeth on that one and see how that goes. And then that's really, I think, what I'm gonna focus on. I think 5 years from now, I'd love to be doing narrative only type of deal.
Hmm.
I think
Right.
everybody answer right. Like I want to make massive movies one day. I don't think it's in the cards for everybody. It may not even be in the cards for me. I have no idea, but I'm definitely gonna shoot my shot at it.
For sure. And is this wait, give me, because is this on Kickstarter?
It's on Seed and Spark,
Seed and
so
Spark.
it's called Somewhere You Feel Free. It's written by Jeannie De La Fuente, and it's directed by really talented Sarah Joy Byington. Um, so yeah, if you guys want to donate, we've got
Yeah,
17.
no, like I will make sure to get that. I feel like now I'm like, okay, there's some fire lit under me to put this out quick to see if, some of the listeners can, help support in that for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, that'd be fantastic. Yeah, Seed and Spark is awesome, and yeah, that's super cool. Let's talk a little bit about inspiration. Like, where do you get inspiration from, and how do you stay inspired?
it's project to project. Honestly, I do have my go-tos. I'm a very visual person. I mean, obviously, you can see behind me, I have shelves and shelves of books. I pull from a lot of stills photography.
Hmm.
I love Annie Leibovitz stuff. And I know it's funny, right? It's a lot of weird old film portrait style stuff, but I think there's a lot that you can take from an image. I think we sometimes as DPs, we'll go in and we'll pull from images that we think are the image we want to create, right? Someone sends you a mood board and it's a lot of shots that directly emulate the shot that you want. But sometimes I want to go look at the emotion I can feel from an image, right? Where it may not be the same image that we're looking to create, but how did someone create sadness in this image? What are the things that they did? Taking those same thought processes and put them into a different type of image. There's so many people that do so many different kinds of great work. I always say you could give the same script or the same shot list and the same camera lighting package and everything to 5 different cinematographers. They're going to make 5 different films, right? So that's the whole great part about this. That's why I don't ever mind sharing knowledge with younger filmmakers. I don't look at anybody as competition. We're all going to be filmmakers. I would literally be the first person to, help you get any job you wanted, because we're all going to get hired for the work that we best fit.
Right.
And so I'm literally like every other cinematographer's biggest fan. Like I still get out when some of my friends make beautiful images. I'm never jealous that I wasn't on that project. I was like, oh my God, you guys did amazing work. Like this is incredible. Right.
Right.
And it just inspires me to go make other incredible work as well. So that's mostly where a lot of that comes from. I can't watch a movie without thinking about how every shot is made. Right? It's almost to a detriment. I'm watching right now The Last Thing He Told Me and Silo on Apple TV, and every single shot I'm like, my gosh, these are incredible. How is this shot done? And I can kind of do it, which is why I love watching Shot Talk with Lawrence Sher, right? He'll break down iconic shots, and I'm always will pause. I'm like, how would I have done this? Let's see how close I could get to how the shot was done. And even on higher levels, man, they just go back to the basics sometimes.
Right.
Literally watched, it was Lawrence Sher talking about Dune, and they were talking about how they shot the scene where all the guys fall from the ceiling in the blacked out, room with the columns in the sand. And I was like, how would you have shot that? How would I have done that? And it seems most basic to use actual sun. Right? I was like, maybe they didn't, but that would be how I'd go about that, is let's use the sun. Come to find out, they shot it between 2 studio walls, made a massive cookie that rolled across the top between the 2 buildings and waited for the sun to be directly overhead, and then just dropped everybody in and used the actual sun. And they just had basically a huge cookie where sun could just come down in massive light rays, and they just filled in fake columns and sand. And you're just like, on a multi-$100 million project, right?
Right.
It's like,
right.
Let's do this.
Yeah. Exactly what makes sense?
Like what makes sense?
Right.
So yeah, it's funny. At any point in your career, right, you're just figuring it out.
Yeah. No, for sure.
There's no right or wrong way to do it. It's just the way you want to.
Right. Man, you've been given a bunch of nuggets, dropping quote unquote gems. Usually I end the episodes with just like talking about and inspiring the next, group of filmmakers. And I was like, okay, well, what would you tell someone that's just coming up, or, like someone that may look at your stuff and think, oh, wow, he's really doing some fantastic stuff. Like, how can I, I guess, create better images? Like, what do you tell to help educate and inspire, I guess, future filmmakers?
Just get on set, man. I have kids out on set all the time. I had to get over feeling bad that I wasn't paying people to come out for things, but it's just like, I have like a kid who he's been coming to sets with me since he was a senior in high school. He's in college now, and he'll send me frame grabs of stuff that he's working on, and you can see progressively he's getting better all the time. And he's using things that he's seen me do, which I have learned from other people, right? We're always there's no way to see how something happens unless you can see it with your own eyes, right?
Right.
Because even like you can watch a YouTube tutorial type deal, but normally they're running on something really small, right? Because if I was to do a YouTube tutorial right now, I don't have everything I would need to show you how to do it correctly. So if you got on a large set, it wouldn't be the same. I wouldn't be sharing the correct knowledge with you.
Hmm.
So ask somebody, right? It never hurts. Just be like, yo, can I come shadow? Like the worst thing they can say is no, right?
Right.
And then you're in the same position you started.
Right.
So I definitely try to have younger kids out on set as much as possible, right?
Hmm.
Like, and I always tell them the same thing. This may not be the correct way. You may go watch this same thing happen on 4 other sets, and they could do it completely different. This is just the way I do things.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. That's awesome. Like, I mean, so much of what you're saying is so much of like what I tell people and what I actually do as well. So like just this year, for the first time, I'm like I've been officially like a mentor through like ISD here locally in Dallas is where I'm based. Um, and you know, like I've had many mentors that I still have, and then you know, at the same time, I'm mentoring high school students, college kids, like I'm about to go into this series and, like people are like, hey, can I shadow show up? Sure, come on. Like, let me know what you want to do and I'll try to get you in the department that you can shadow someone that, fits your vision of what so no, that's awesome.
it's the only way to learn. It really is. Um, and I think just finding people who are nice enough to let you come and shadow work, right?
Right,
I could either do two things like I'm gonna figure out big narrative work on my own. But could you imagine the steps I could take if say like Lauren Scher or Hoyt Van Hoytema or somebody was like, come check out us making the next Nolan film.
right,
I had
right,
to sit here and watch the amount of knowledge you would learn in even a week's time
right,
would save you years in your career,
for
right?
sure.
How did you do that? Like, and it's funny because it's always going to be one nugget you may learn that's just for that project. Like listening to Greg talk about how for Dune, it was this weird process of they shot digitally, put it to film, and then went back to digital to get a certain look because just digital and just film wasn't working,
Hmm.
right? This was the way that they got the correct looking image for Dune, or Hoyt working on Nope. He was like, this day for night wasn't really working the way we wanted it to, so we shot infrared and then day for night and stacked the two images so that we could get this really unique look of being nighttime but seeing the clouds because you
Right,
can't shoot that on camera correctly. So they just went out and tested and came up with the process, right? It wasn't like Hoyt was like, oh yeah, I've seen someone do something before right there. They're at the top of their game, figuring out these massive, large problems and just doing it a way that they want to. And now I'm sure that will inspire a ton of other filmmakers to do similar processes or not be
right,
to be like, I don't know how to do this. Let's figure it out. Right.
right.
If it's never been done before, let's just figure it out.
Right. No, for sure. So David, give us your social, give us, like your website so that people can follow you, keep up with what you're doing, and I'll make sure to include that along with the Seed and Spark in the show notes.
Cool. Yeah, it's David Wells underscore DP. And then the website is davidwellsdp.com. Um, yeah, I think those are the only things I really have going on out there.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean that's two important things, website and Instagram. So,
I got to get
David,
better at updating the website. I don't even know if I've done a reel this year. I've been too busy, but that's got to be on the list at some point.
yeah, well, how often do you update your reel? Because I mean, like I know when I updated my reel maybe last year or the year before, but it was like 4 years or something ridiculous.
I try to do every year because I look back on last year and I'm just thinking in my head, the last year's projects are exponentially better than the reel
For
I have.
sure.
But we live in this weird world where a lot of people just go straight to Instagram or straight here. You never really know what they're looking at. So I try for every year, but I don't edit. So it's like always trying to find someone and getting all the work over to them and stuff. And then, like I said, I'm normally minutes between things quite
Right.
often. It's on
Right.
it's on my list to get out. It should have came out in January, but we'll shoot for like midsummer.
Cool. Well, David, I appreciate you giving some time for us on the Capture Line podcast.
Yeah, appreciate it, man.
So again, I want to thank David for coming on the Capture Light podcast. Be sure to follow him. Um, just support him and what he's doing with his narrative journey. Just fantastic DP, doing some amazing things. Go to his website, go to his Instagram. All that information will be in the show notes. And it's capturelightpodcast.com. This is episode number 138. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. You can reach out via email. You can check me out on Instagram, send me a message at Gaddis. And I will try to do my best. I will try to do my best to do a few podcasts while I'm on this series. This series is going to take up like my summer. It's like a 60-day schedule. And it's going to be pretty intense, but I don't want to just completely disappear off of the face of the earth for a while, and you wonder if like I'm still like here on this planet. So with that being said, I will continue to try to get these podcasts cranked out. I appreciate you for listening, and keep making awesome films. Keep doing what you're doing. And if you're not doing anything, then you need to get out there and start. That's all I got. I'll catch you in the next episode.
Thanks for listening to Capturing Light with Les Gaddis, a director of photographers podcast. Inspiring and educating filmmakers like you so you can illuminate your vision. A Gaddis Visuals production.